The Indian Navy is committed to safeguarding the seas and protecting the trade and also having a peaceful Indian Ocean region.
The very sight of the Indian Navy is a deterrent to such actions.
India is really affected by this Red Sea crisis. And the moment this crisis emerged, it proactively deployed 13 to 14 ships. It was the Indian naval crew which boarded this ship on fire, burning ship which had this thing, and extinguished that fire. Indian Navy remains the strongest force in Indian Ocean region.
The Arabs have a genius for anarchy. Please harken back to the 1973 Arab-Israeli war, when for the first time the Arabs had used oil as a weapon and shaken the world, caused an economic recession of huge proportions. Once again, we see the Arabs doing a very, very innovative response to the Israeli invasion of Gaza. And as we all are aware, Iran has its three H's: the Hamas, the Hezbollah, and the Houthis, which it has used in a very, very effective way to counter whatever the Americans and Israelis are doing in the Middle East. The Houthis found the perfect weapon. They are located at a strategic choke point in the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, just 20 miles across. It is a strategic choke point of great value, and they have shown what choke points can do to, choking traffic, the global traffic. And once again, their attacks on oil shipping have forced the merchant shipping ships to go around the Cape of Good Hope, extend the voyage by 6,000 kilometers, and about 10 to 12 days, 2 weeks additional have been added. Insurance costs have gone up, and world is again staring in the face of a recession. Now, to discuss all these very interesting and very seminal topics, we are very lucky to have with us Vice Admiral Gade, former Vice Chief of the Naval Staff. He's had a very brilliant career in the Navy, with the Indian Navy. He's been in command of the Maharashtra Naval Area with 34 ships under his command, and then he has been the Director General Naval Operation, DGNO, and that means he's a thoroughbred professional as far as the Navy is concerned, because there's no more hands-on job than the DGNO. And then, of course, he has been DSIDS with the Chief of the Integrated Defence Staff, where he's dealt with tri-service issues. So I think we couldn't have had somebody better qualified to comment on these topics and issues. So, Admiral Gade, thank you for joining us on this occasion. Welcome to the Republic Studio.
Thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be here also.
It all started, as we all know, 7th of October, the Hamas attacks Israel, surprise attack. There is, of course, that question, did the Mossad not know? And it's one of the world's best intelligence agencies. And how could they have been so surprised? There are various theories doing the rounds. But we will await for our Israeli friends to carry out their inquiries, and I'm sure that is a very vibrant democracy, and the details will come out subsequently. Because the Israeli actions have not ceased, it is the Hamas which has been deciding to continue, and so also the Hezbollah has been mounting pressure on the northern borders. It is the Houthis that have done the trick by continuing their attacks on the shipping in the Red Sea. We in India are seriously concerned. 50% of our exports and 30% of our imports go through this this particular naval sea lines of communication. That also brings into question the fact that the global supply chains can so easily be threatened at given choke points. Now, I now request you, Admiral Gade, for your views on the overall geostrategic scenario.
So thank you, sir. You rightly brought out the geopolitical situation, which was actually you brought out India is really affected by this Red Sea crisis. The world trade, 12% of world trade flows through the Red Sea and Suez Canal. Almost 30% of container traffic flows through the Red Sea, and 40% of Asia-Europe trade is through the Red Sea. So it's really going to affect. And for us, like you said, 50% of exports and 30% imports, our maximum trade, which is with Europe and UK, flows through the Red Sea, because that's the shortest route and that's the most economical. So it is almost 80% of our trade with Europe and UK are through this. Right. And the way you have said that the America was not wanting to get involved was because also that once the Israel-Hamas war started, they had to look at Lebanon, which you said Hezbollah. Yeah. And so they deployed their 2 aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean. Right. Now either to move those carriers to Red Sea, that was a question mark. But then when the Houthis started their action, because rightly you thought they've got the right asymmetric warfare, and they have held Saudis to the bay for the last 10 years, and Saudis are in the negotiation table with Houthis for finding a truce. The truce was signed and they were progressing with that, but now in a situation where they are fighting a global power, US and UK together and with the allies. So they've set up a Operation Prosperity Guardian in which they want to protect the trade. Right. And that's the aim, to protect the trade. But Houthis have been very selective and targeting all the cargo and the vessels which are heading towards Israel, and also targeting only the US and UK ships mostly. Of course, there have been other ships, Greece and others who have been there, who have come into this place.
Admiral Gade, I'm just curious. Yes. How do they identify the ships? Because do the Houthis have that level, or is it coming, intelligence is coming from Iran?
I think positively there is a help from the Iran. Yeah. And there is no doubt about it. And like you brought out, the Iran's axis of resistance are the 3 H's you brought out earlier. So they are positively supporting.
And if I may just interject here, you know, one of the reasons being touted is that they had General Soleimani, you know, who was the people who had set up these 3 H's and the Shia and Iraqi militias. He was their intelligence special operations man. And the Americans eliminated him. Now, once he is gone, the Iranian control over their own proxies has weakened.
Very true. And that's why they are refuting that they are supporting them.
That's right.
Whilst
that's right.
It wouldn't have been possible that Houthis would have operated in such a way, and it's a force to reckon with, because the way they were able to capture seize Galaxy.
That's right. Yes. That ship which the Americans had captured earlier.
And they have seized that ship and brought it ashore. And that too with their own air force. The videos which they set out were that it showed a very, very professional operation in hijacking a vessel.
That's right. Sir. So what has been the response? Let's come closer home.
Yes, sir.
Of the Indian Navy to this very great situation of very substantial crisis.
So since November, there have been a number of drone attacks and also piracy and hijacking incidents. In November we had 1, in December 2, in January we had 5. And all these incidents, the Indian Navy has deployed a ship in the Gulf of Aden since 2008. For the Somalian pirates. So we have had a ship there continuously. And the moment this situation was developing, we deployed 2 ships in near Bab el-Mandeb and Gulf of Aden, and about 10 to 13 ships in Arabian Sea. Because the incidents happened at many locations which had which is in the vast Arabian Sea also. So some happened off Kochi, some happened off Goa, some happened at the Bab el-Mandeb, just near the Bab el-Mandeb and Djibouti. So the aim was for us to first check this piracy, because the Somalian pirates again got, I think, they took the advantage of the Red Sea crisis, where Houthis are opposing and creating a situation that a merchant vessel who just passes through the Red Sea safely, and then there are pirates waiting by, because obviously. So the aim was to bring this piracy to an end. We had been able to, from 2008, we had been able to nip that piracy to an extent that the high risk area had been moved because of the efforts by the Indian Navy in that area, and of course the other multinational forces who have been protecting the trade in that particular area. But at this particular time, the other ships have not been actually more of a proactive than how I think aggressively and proactively Indian Navy has acted in giving assistance to the merchant vessels, and not only Indian but any vessel which was in distress,
any other flag,
of any other flag also, and any other nationality. The crew also could be from anywhere, and therefore you would have seen,
including Pakistan, I think.
In fact, we have there were two Iranian fishing vessels which had 19 Pakistanis on board who have been
rescued by the Indian Navy.
Indian Navy, that's right, sir. So this.
You've taken extensive part in anti-piracy operations. Just for the audience interest, I think it would be, just recount if you could, some of your experiences in this tackling the Somalian pirates.
So these have been right from beginning. In 2008, we positioned a frigate-sized ship in that area, and in the initial stages itself, we've had interactions with the UK MTO and UNAVFOR and others, and we had been exchanging information. But we've been operating independently in Indian Navy. So we've been having situations where we've got distress messages from the ships, and we have been able to send ships in time, and we have been able to locate even at places the mother vessel which controls the pirates,
the smaller boats,
and those skiffs who go and board the merchant vessels. And over the period we have done many such operations. The recent one was actually one which was worth this thing, in which there was a piracy attack. We got this information and we used the surveillance, the PATI aircraft, and of course our Sea Guardian, and went and monitored that vessel and sent our ship in that. And the warnings ensured that the pirates fled that particular way. And there is a citadel created in a merchant ship, where it's over the period we have created the SOP has been created, standard operating procedure, in a manner that the crew goes into the citadel, where they have the steering with them. Propulsion will not be with them, but the steering would be there. The engines are left on their own, but the propulsion, the steering is there, and with that they can steer the ship out of danger with that. And even if the pirates come in, they won't be able to capture the crew in that manner. So this is what was happened on one of the incidents which happened recently, where they went in, and when our aircraft went and gave the warning, and when our marine commandos boarded the vessel,
that reminds me, the Marine Commandos are, the romance of the Marine Commandos, it's so palpable and obvious amongst the youth of our country. Tell us a bit about the Marcos.
So the Marine Commandos is a very elite force raised in 1987, and they are very well trained. Like we have commandos, but they are the one breed of specialized force which can operate in all the three mediums, that is air, surface and underwater.
Excellent.
And the most important thing is underwater, because man lives on land, and therefore the medium of sea is something which is foreign, and therefore to operate underwater and in a medium, that really requires a bit of this thing, and therefore the training is really very elite. And it's the sea is a very difficult medium, or a very challenging medium, because the nature itself you can't fight, and the winds and waves which cause such a certain this thing to operate. And therefore, Marine Commando is trained to board a ship at sea, that maritime interdiction operations, which they do, in which you have to board a vessel, which is a moving vessel, from a moving platform. And you have to be at that speed and board that ship. And there could be the boarding also could be three types. It could be a compliant boarding, it could be a non-compliant boarding, or it could be an opposed boarding.
Excellent.
In a compliant boarding, if the master of the vessel and the crew have agreed to, then there is no problem. In a non-compliant boarding, in which
it's almost like an assault.
That means they are not agreeing, but we are boarding. And in an opposed, there could be the pirates will be armed and they are firing at you, and in that situation you have to do. So this is the sort of training they undergo, and then they are able to not only engage this particular the pirates in a manner with their superb training which they have, and they are a real professional force in this manner, because because in water they are in such a manner that blindfolded they should be able to repair a OBM, outboard motor, in that manner, because firstly it's a very small team. It's a small team. It's in the water. A prahar consists of only 8 men. They are part of a team which will board, but that team is the only team, and they have a small boat. And if there is an emergency, if there is an incident, if there is an injury, the support system is within that, and therefore that becomes much more challenging. They have been trained so well that at present we have air droppable rips, which are air droppable boats, which can be launched at over 2,000 miles from our coastline. And even by C-130s and C-17s, we have done the operations, and the Marine Commandos can be launched at a ship which is around 2,000 miles. Therefore, we don't need to send them on a ship, and the deployment is much swifter, and they will be available at the action wherever their need is there in a very short time. And this creates a reach, which is something which says that in the Indian Ocean region we would be able to provide. And Marine Commandos, by that type of training, and like you brought out that they have been you've seen them in J&K, they are actually deployed from the northern regions till the islands, south in the Andaman and Nicobar, and all over the place.
Sarvatra.
And it's a very small force,
elite force,
which have been able to, and their training is very rigorous, because of their the screening which takes place to see that they qualify, and a very professional force, which has been which is something has brought glory to Indian Navy. They were the first ones to go into when the Mumbai attack happened into Taj. And they were able to save over
substantial number of people
at that particular time. And they went in a place where the contours of the place were not known to them.
Absolutely.
They were able to,
absolutely. Uncharted
areas. So therefore, this is something which we need to be proud of. And that's why this is a very small and elite force, which has been able to do operations and has been able to create such a deterrence value that the pirates are really afraid. And that's why we've seen the moment our actions have started, and Indian Navy has positioned number of ships with the prahars on board.
The very sight of the Indian Navy is a deterrent to such actions.
And then kudos to be given to the people who did this anti-piracy operations, to the Indian Navy personnel, and of course the Marine Commandos and the ships also, which gave the firefighting. Went and gave assistance to the ship at sea, which was under fire.
What I would like to, I remember from my days in the Military Operations Directorate, in the 71 war, the Marcos had not been raised then, but I remember the kind of frogman attacks that we had done on Pakistani shipping in Chittagong and in deep inland ports. 200 strong Mukti Bahini guerrillas were trained in,
Yes.
just swimming downstream,
That's
with just that goggles and their commando knives and with limpet mines, and the amount of damage they had inflicted on the Pakistani Navy and the Pakistani merchant shipping, in the entry ports of Khulna, Chittagong, is something which is amazing.
Yes.
I again remember when I was in the MO Directorate, we had this incident, the Abdullah Lutufi gang had taken over Maldives, just taken charge of Maldives and, staged a coup. And then that is the time the Para Brigade had gone in. And fortunately the airfield was with us, so we were able to quickly get the president released and all that. But after that, they had taken off in a merchant ship. They had hijacked a merchant ship, captured the Minister of Education and his foreign wife, and they were running away on the high seas. They were chased by, I think, the Betwa and one more ship. And finally, they had to open fire. Godavari.
Yes,
they had opened fire on them and set their engine on fire, and they were forced to stop. And then they had boarded and rescued. They had told them to, the civilians separate and the pirates separate on this side of the deck. That was a marvelous operation that I recall from my days in the military operation directorate. And again, we saw the Marcos in action in Jammu and Kashmir. We were doing counter, terrorist operations. But to come back to the present now, where do you see this going? You think repeated air attacks will be able to stop the Houthis from targeting the ships? We've seen so far it has not.
Yes.
The president of Yemen has been calling for a ground invasion. I don't see the Americans putting boots on the ground.
Yes.
So where does it all stop?
It's a very, very tricky situation, sir, and very, very challenging situation, because it's somewhat of war of attrition.
That's right.
But the Americans have been, they had come in the Iraq war, whether it was Iran-Iraq war earlier, then when they've liberated Kuwait from Iraq. But that time it was unopposed.
Absolutely.
And this time it's a different enemy.
Right.
And actually, for the first time, the Americans are facing in this region
They are stumped.
by an enemy after World War II.
That's
because here is the enemy Houthis. They have fired for the first time actually in the history. They are using anti-ship ballistic missiles.
Right.
Anti-ship ballistic missiles are being used for the first time in the shipping, sir.
Right.
By Houthis.
That's
which is something unprecedented. And the Americans actually, they, despite all the surveillance measures and the weapons, the sensors they have, they get only 1 minute of reaction time, and to shoot down that missile is only 9 to 15 seconds.
That's right.
So within that time they have to act. So this sort of an enemy which they have met. So it is not going to be an easy task. Whilst the Americans have taken this decision to use force and target military targets to a great extent, but whilst there was a lull in between month of February, but just recently, 2 days back, there have been again attacks.
That's
so
right.
That really says
precisely.
And they have targeted US ships and the UK ships, and even a ship has been sunk. So
fact,
therefore, this is not going to end, sir.
This is not going to end soon.
Exactly. That is the point I wanted to say, sir.
I'll reinforce that point.
Yes,
because in my readings, the Israel-Hamas conflict, if it escalates to the Hezbollah joining in, that's another very combat-hardened force, and they have already forced the vacation of 70,000 Israeli citizens from North Israel, right? And those people are not available for doing their industrial jobs. 300,000 have been mobilized, Israeli soldiers. They are not available for their economic aspects. So how long can Israel sustain is also a question mark. Yes, they have the full backing of the Americans, but we find that the Americans are also now getting edgy. And President Biden has been trying to prevail upon Prime Minister Netanyahu to stop this war, to cut the costs and, call it off now.
They had discussions in Cairo. Sir,
they had discussions in Cairo.
But Netanyahu has actually said no. He's not agreed because he wants to attack that city of Rafah, where almost 1 million of Palestinians are now.
Now hold
shelter.
up, because they have nowhere else to go. They have only the sea to go into now.
Very true.
But I reckon there is one deadline that is coming is the Ramadan, month of Ramadan. Will they go in for a ceasefire? It's a psychological point of view that in the month of Ramadan, we got in peace kind of a thing. But then Hamas has to play ball.
Exactly.
Hamas is acting very defiant, and that is why the talks broke down. And we saw this escalation of violence without either side wanting an escalation.
Very true.
Because the Iranians felt that if Israel is not going to stop, it is a loss of face for them and for their 3 H's and their proxies operating in the Middle East, that Israel is just not calling a halt. And therefore, you find their tit-for-tat escalation, the 2 ships that you mentioned, which they struck with the tactical ballistic missile. And I'm given to understand they've also used underwater drones
for the first time.
For the first time against civilian shipping.
Yes, civilian shipping. But luckily the US detected it.
In time and was able to neutralize it.
There's underwater drones. So even in our one of the incident I wanted to tell you, apart from the piracy, was the missile attack which was on a container ship.
That's right.
Which had happened, and also on a ship which was carrying naphtha. So the ship was carrying 84,770 tons of naphtha.
My God.
And it's a highly inflammable material. And it was on fire. This was off Gulf of Aden. At that time, this distress call came in. So our Indian naval ship, Vishakhapatnam, went to give rescue. We had an American ship and a French ship also which came, but they remained 10 miles away. And they just said, we will provide equipment.
Right.
So it was the Indian naval crew which boarded this ship on fire. Burning ship, which had this thing, and extinguished that fire. And I think
that is remarkable. That is really remarkable. This is one of the most hazardous commodities to get on fire.
And it could result into a blast. It could result into a fire which spreads rapidly. And therefore, I think that was
boarding such a ship, getting your ship alongside,
and then going and extinguishing that fire.
I think I'm sure they will be recognized on this forthcoming Republic Day. They deserve all recognition. Our sailor, our boys in blue.
In addition, there were 2 fishing vessels, which were the Sri Lankan. There was a Sri Lankan fishing vessel, which had been, which was boarded by the pirates.
That's right.
And this operation was done by the Indian Navy and the Sicilian Coast Guard.
Right.
So, and if you recall, so this Sicilian Coast Guard has a ship named Topaz, which has been presented, which is a trinket class ship gifted by Indian Navy, and we have been supporting it for the years together. And we have actually trained the Sicilian Coast Guard too, and they have really acted well, and they were able to rescue the pirates from there. And this ship was involved in an anti-piracy attack in 2010 also, the same
ship.
Same ship. So here is one great capacity building which Indian Navy and India in turn actually has been doing for its neighbors and supporting. That's right.
Let's talk of we are talking of the danger to the SLOCs, the sea lines of communication. And China has been extremely active in trying to, push through its Belt Road initiative. It was an extremely smart economic move on the part of the Chinese. They had excess capacity of production of steel, cement, etc. And, their own domestic market was absolutely saturated. There are blocks and blocks of tenements which are lying untenanted. Nobody is willing to buy them or has the money to buy those flats in China. So very cleverly they got onto the Belt Road initiative, and as part of that was the China-Pakistan economic corridor, which comes through our area incidentally, with not even a thank you note or a permission that can I build this through your area. And quite obviously India was the only country that opposed it. And now India and the United States and other countries like Israel, UAE, etc. are getting together to propose alternative economic corridors like the kind of ones that the Chinese were proposing to build. The problem with the Chinese corridors was whichever country they went to aid economically, they caused its economic ruin. The example of Sri Lanka is so live. That economy, vibrant economy, flourishing tourism, etc. has been ruined. And I have a sneaking suspicion, and Admiral Gade, I would request for your views, that the Chinese have done more behind the scenes than we possibly really thought they would do. They have a base in Djibouti.
Yes.
Strong naval and military base, permanent base, you see. But their ships have not done a sausage to prevent the Houthis from the depredations on the trade. Equally, the Chinese trade is not being targeted specifically, but it would be affected because even some of their vessels, I suppose, must be rerouted, are being rerouted with attendant time penalties, cost penalties, insurance penalties, etc. But they haven't done a sausage.
Yes.
They have also done very little compared to the Indian Navy and its activity against the Somali pirates.
Yes.
You see, they have not moved a finger. There is a sneaking suspicion that the Chinese have encouraged this conflict. They have encouraged Iran and its proxies to sort of bog the United States down here and bog the rest of the countries down here and make sure that our corridor, which we were planning with the Americans, the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, to stymie it altogether. What do you agree with that?
There could be a possibility, sir. In any case, I think the Chinese, in both the ways, whether it was Ukraine-Russia war, the China has benefited tremendously.
Absolutely.
By supporting of course, Russia and having an opportunity. And here is another. The Belt Road Initiative actually, like you brought out, was failing because of the
distress, economic distress is caused.
Economic distress and the distrust which is caused which has been come out.
That's right.
Whereas I think India has always been a reliable and a responsible and a development partner in the world trade. I think the G20 spoke it all, that we had the motto of one world, one family and one future. That actually said it all. And that's why you rightly brought out the Middle East Economic Corridor, which was really a good game plan for our government of India, which they did a very this thing. And this is going to have an effect, truly. The Red Sea crisis, if it is prolonged, which is likely, and unless there is a solution to this and it will happen, this is something which we need to look at very closely. And it is in the interest of the world and India, I think, that this crisis come to a head.
Our economic interests.
And our economic interests. And also the nations who were part of this Middle East Economic Corridor, which was being recruited by the India. And like you said, UAE, Israel, which are part of it.
United States.
United States, very much. So I think this will help.
USU
so there positively and possibility is there that the Chinese will have their own say, because they continue to operate in a manner that will only look at their interest, and they will make sure that something which where India is doing something, it could be stymied. Maldives is a great example after the elections.
Oh yes,
sir. So we need to
be very cautious.
Be very cautious. We have complete the Maldives. We have, like you brought out, we had deployed ships to save them in 1998. We have done it number of times.
Operation Cactus, I remember.
Operation Cactus. But now again they have been able to put that India first to India out campaign. That's right.
I totally agree with you. Especially the Chinese are not well disposed towards us. Is getting more obvious by the day. And the way they have tried to do their string of pearls strategy energetically, follow it by trying to gain, influence at our cost over the Maldives. I had led the NDC delegation to the Maldives in 2007. And even then, we had a very liberal and a democratic government in place then, very modernist in its outlook. And when we were discussing with them, they told us we are getting worried about the creeping Wahhabization, Islamization that is being done in Maldives, courtesy the ISI, courtesy a number of Middle Eastern countries. You know, they said the number of people with short pajamas, which is a clear sign, and the number of burqas that, you know, are coming up, they were not there in the Maldives earlier. They're a very liberal society otherwise, and not at all Islamist or extremist in outlook. But I suppose Maldives will have to choose between terrorism or tourism.
Very true.
Please don't forget the fact that, you know, you recall that so many of their people had gone and joined the ISIS, over 250.
Correct.
It was one of the largest contingents to join the ISIS. So what does Maldives want? Does it want tourism or does it want terrorism? And I'm afraid the two can't go together.
Very true.
The two can't go together. And recently, you know, the Prime Minister went to the, you know, the Maldives island.
Yes.
And they're just 100 miles
Correct,
from
sir.
the Maldives, and we could do as well. We could
Very
sort of draw
Create such
all
a-
our tourist traffic. In
Very
fact,
true.
Tata's, I believe, is building 2 5-star facilities there. And I think we should, if this is the way the Maldivian, the current Maldivian dispensation wants to make a choice between terrorism versus tourism, then we can pick up that tourism slack into the Maldives island and Lakshadweep island, sorry.
Very true, sir.
And I think that is the way to go. Thank you so much, Admiral Gade. It has
Thank
been
you.
such a pleasure to get the insights from a hands-on naval professional, Director General Naval Operations, Vice Chief of the Naval Staff. We couldn't have asked for anybody more better qualified. Thank you for taking the time out.